Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome to our first council meeting of the new year. I'll now call the meeting to order, and I will ask Tom, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Moore,
Here.
Councilmember Sistarsik,
Here.
Councilmember Masalabit,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Verapapa,
Here.
and Mayor Kalming,
Here.
all present.
Next, we'll have the approval of the agenda and waiver of full reading of resolutions and ordinances. By motion of the City Council, this is the time to notify the public of any changes to the agenda and/or rearrange the order of the agenda. Does anyone wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, do we have any supplemental communications?
Yes, Mayor, 9 supplemental communications were received regarding various agenda items after the posting of the agenda. Those items have been distributed to the council and made available to the public on the city's website. I do have one other thing that I'd like to note, that there's an addition to item D, which is, I think the 4th document is the calendar of meetings. And the Seal Beach Historic Resources Foundation, the time of those meetings are first and third Thursdays at 5 p.m. We did not have the time when the agenda was posted.
Okay. I'll then ask for a motion and a second.
I don't need to know.
So moved.
A second?
Okay, please vote.
I just thought I'd remind you. What?
Councilmember Sistarsik?
Yes.
You are a yes?
Yeah,
We're good?
yes.
Okay.
And that motion carries. Next, we're going to have a marine safety statistical wrap-up from Marine Safety Chief Joe Bailey.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thanks for giving me a minute tonight to talk about our Marine Safety Department. This is a report for a year of time between October 21st, 2021 to October 2022. So I'm going to go through this pretty quick. Follow along. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me. And this is just, like I said, a summary of service. If you see on the first slide, we had 15,472 contacts, and that's between rescues and warning people and dogs on the beach and everything. These are the overall stats for us. You can see on the bottom, if we scroll down a little bit there, Chief, it shows our busiest time for all of these things is July, August, September. And then the next slide will show days of the week. Kind of surprising, Monday is really busy. I'm kind of wondering if that's when I come back on shift, my guys start hustling or something. I don't know, but Monday seems like the busiest day, which was odd to me. And then all the actions where you would expect. So near the 8th Street parking lot, the 10th Street parking lot, and the 1st Street parking lot is the greatest activity. And that's where people park, and that's where people use the beach, and then that's where we either rescue them or tell them they're doing something wrong ultimately. So this next page, these are individual stats. We're not going to get into those too much. It's kind of cool because it shows the top 6 people are the lifeguards that work year-round, and they obviously have the most contacts with the public. And then we're going to skip over that next one there, Chief, public dashboard. We're going to go straight to enforcement. So this just shows our busiest time, once again, is in the summertime. We have, and the activities where the people are. We're going to get into some specifics as we move along here, and we're going to start with 970s. Now, 970s are if someone's illegally in the water, so maybe they're illegally swimming, which in California, technically you can't illegally swim, but they're illegally surfing, windsurfing, kayaking, bodyboarding, and these are when we talk to people and say, hey, you can't do that here. We have different areas on the beach for these things, and we kind of move people to get them away from stingrays a little bit, and for a lot of different reasons. So 4,000 of those. Preventive action, which is the best lifeguarding there is when you talk to someone before they get in the water and show them the best place to go. So we had 4,000 of those. And the bottom, it says the top units and locations. So on all of these charts, the top unit is going to be 5110, which is our lifeguard station is 51. And our unit on the north side or the west side of the beach is 5110. So that's where most of the action happens. And then in the wintertime, when we have one unit on the beach, that person usually claims the call signal 5110. So that's why you'll see that throughout this presentation. Contacts with just the public in general is quite a bit. There's 1,000 of those, and that's like, hey, what time is it? And we'd let people know what time it is, or we tell them, hey, this is a better place to go surfing or swimming or those type of things. Small families should go over here. So it's a 7-day-a-week operation. Every day of the year we have someone on the beach contacting people. The next one is our 902Ms and 902M majors. So those are our medical aids. So in total that year we had over 1,000 medical aids. Majors are the ones that go to the hospital. And on those, we work extremely well with the OCFA. We have fostered a relationship with the local guys here. They generally meet us at headquarters. We transport the patient off the beach to headquarters, and they take it from there for the majors, the ones that go to the hospital. And you can see, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see the locations. And once again, it's pretty general, the same hotspots where people are. The next one is 906, and that means rescue. So we had 544 rescues in this period. Most rescues, as you can see, are made in the summer months, as the graph up top shows. And there's more people at the beach. And those are generally, lifeguards in towers going out and making a rescue, making contact with one or two people, usually in a rip current, and swimming them to the side and bringing them in. It's a great time of year to point out that not only do we have, those are basic rescues, but we have large surf also in the wintertime, and those rescues are much more technical. And we have some great water people that are just, awesome in the water to make these rescues, because ultimately, lifeguarding comes down to the lifeguard, a pair of swim fins, and a can buoy. And that's how the rescues get made normally. Obviously, we have a boat, and we have PWCs or RWCs, which are jet skis, and we use those effectively, but it really all comes down to that person, and usually a part-time employee, making that good rescue. Next, we talk about boat rescues. We had 223 of those, and those include boats, jet skis, kite surfers we consider a vessel, kayaks, any of those are boat rescues, so we had 223 of those. Next is 928, and that's a missing person, or missing item, missing item. And so, we take in a bunch of items, and we try and find owners for those items, and we work with police department with that also. They eventually come and we label everything, and we keep them for a week, and then if no one picks them up by then, Dominic from the police department comes, and it goes into, I've never even seen the room, but I'm sure there's some amazing stuff that's been in there for years. Or you guys have garage sales or something. The next slide is wildlife. Some interesting stuff here. We have turtles, we have dolphins, sometimes whales, and these are all either sick, injured, or they just come up on the beach, and so we have to deal with them. So we have some interesting stories there, but we dealt with 125 of those. Missing persons, there's next. So most of these are kids, and most of them, as you can see, if you scroll down to the bottom there, happen right next to the pier, because that's mostly where the families are, and so we had 35 of those in that year. Now we get into kind of some breakdown of all those numbers I just went through, so we're going to go pretty quick. I'm going to point out a few things. In this one, we had 11,828 calls in this period, and that's on the bottom line there. It shows all of these calls together. The next page, we talk about rescues again. And all the stuff, actually go down, keep going. All this stuff talks about what kind of rescues they are and where they were. But I think that, back up a little bit, the most important thing here is most of them are surf related and surf or rip current related. So at our beach, most of our rescues are made in rip currents. Rip currents are caused by surf. So it's, you know, they have a rip current and a surf category, but to me they're the same thing. So I'd say 90% of our rescues are surf and rip current related. And then keep going here. These are lost items. Once again, we talked about that. We don't categorize those. Those are wallets, watches, keys, cell phones, backpacks. We see all that stuff. And then 970s are illegal swimming, surfing, etc. If we get specific on our medical aids a little bit. Some head and neck injuries. Those are generally the ones that are going to the hospital. Kind of an interesting one, jellyfish. 35 jellyfish incidents in that year. And then the big question down at the bottom everybody always asks is stingrays. Very last line, Mike. 665. So we average 500 a year, so that last year was up some. And I don't have a reason for that outside of maybe more people visited the beach, because the more people in the water, the more people get stung ultimately. All right, let's keep going here. We're almost there. These are medical aid majors, and most of the time a major for us is going to be a broken bone. It's going to be a possible broken neck. So those are the ones that most often we're going to be sending to the hospital. On the boat rescues, as we keep going, we had a total of 223 victims, 199 total calls, and you can see on the list there's different. We towed some, we warned some, we rescued some. So there's a whole myriad of things with boats out there. Because we have a harbor on each side and we have a well-known windsurf and kite surf area, we get a lot of vessels in our area. And then the next page is contacts. So these are people that we talk to about whatever it could be on the beach. And just public contacts. Once again, what time is it? And public education, that type of thing. The last thing we're going to talk about is enforcement. So there's a couple things I want to talk about enforcement. Obviously, the dogs on the beach is an interesting one if we scroll down to the middle of the page. So we talk to 8.5 dogs a day, and I think I figured it out. We talk to 7.3 owners per day. So we talk to more dogs than owners, but we talk to a lot of dogs on the beach. And this has been going on for years. And so it's one I wanted to point out. And then PD Assist is in there for 12. And then lastly, we have tents, which is interesting, 414. So while I have you here, these are the, I just wanted to talk about enforcement for a minute and highlight a few of the municipal codes that we have. That someone figured out before I started lifeguarding in '89, these codes were already there, and someone saw the future somehow on a couple of these. It's pretty interesting to me. So the first one is tents on the beach. So we have a municipal code that says tents can only have 2 sides. So if it's a 4-sided tent, we tell people you can't have that on the beach. And now, once in a while, we'll get an upset mom that says, what am I supposed to do with our kids? And we definitely have sympathy for her, and we want her to be able to shade her kids, but you can't have a 4-sided tent on the beach. And I think that's a great rule for a number of reasons. One, who knows? Who knows if they got a keg inside that tent, right? If you can't see it. Who knows what's going on inside the tent when you can't see it? And the other thing, obviously lately that's been a thing is unhoused people at the beach, and they're not allowed to have a tent. So they can only have a 2-sided tent, according to our municipal code. So that's one of the interesting ones. The next interesting one is we have a municipal code that says you can't have bikes on the beach. You can't ride your bike on the beach. So as a young lifeguard, I always thought, why is this rule? Because we'd get a guy every other year who'd come down and have a specialized fat tire bike and he'd try and ride it down the beach. And it didn't look fun. It looked difficult. So I thought, no one ever does this. Why do they have this rule? But thank goodness it's there with the new advent of e-bikes. So I don't know if you've seen the people flying around town on these things and up and down the pier and try to go on the beach, but we have a rule on the books that we enforce: no bikes on the beach. So it's been great that rule's there, and like I said, someone saw the future with that one. And then the third one, and I've talked about it a little bit, is the dogs. Like I said, we've talked to an average of 8.5 dogs on the beach and 7.3 owners. And as a department, I can tell you, my staff is looking forward to having our own animal control department in town. And we're looking for some help. And I've talked to the police about this, and I hope we're in agreement. I know we're trying to hold off on citing. We're trying to warn and advise and educate. But my point is, we've educated on the beach for 5 years now with this many warnings every day. A lot of warnings for the whole year, and my suggestion is that once we're able to write citations for dogs, I think we should on the beach. Anyway, that is the last point of my presentation. I know we have a page or two more. I think we have missing persons and lost kids, and I thought it was kind of funny. The last one, if you go back to that, Mike, is I think we still have a lost kid out there because we had 9 lost and we only found 8, but I think maybe the stats are wrong there because in my memory, we found them all. And then lastly is prevention. And like I said, preventative actions are the key to lifeguarding. The perfect day of lifeguarding would be 300 preventative actions and 0 rescues. So that just means we're doing a proactive, good job the more of these we have. So that's what I look forward to from my staff. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any. If not, I appreciate the time.
Any questions? Sandra?
I just like to point out that I bet I know why there's no tents on the beach.
Okay.
And that it's written into the code. Remember Tin Can Beach? Where you weren't even alive when it
No,
was Tin. No.
I've heard about it.
Bolsa Chica.
Uh-huh.
Used to be Tin Can Beach. And all through the winter, people would go down there and drink beer or whatever, leave their cans on the beach, and come spring, they were all rusted out. They called it Tin Can Beach, and people would come and clean up the beach every spring. And in the wintertime, there were people out there in their tents, sleeping all winter, I guess. I don't know. I didn't go by every day, but there were always tents out there. That's why there's no tents,
Okay.
I bet.
Did they have pull tabs back then?
No, yeah, they did.
All right. That looks like it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we're going to have our OCFA Division Chief, Craig Covey, give us an update on Orange County Fire Authority fire safety hazards.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Thank you all for letting me have a moment with you. Working with your city manager, we thought this would be a valuable subject to bring to you and your residents. It's a concern the fire service is really starting to identify in the last 3 to 5 years, and it's becoming very much more exponential as we move forward in our direction of going to more of a green society and using battery-powered devices of all shapes and sizes, whether it's the cordless drills, it's a scooter, it's a bicycle, or a car. There is a hazard that we are noticing. I really started noticing in the past year before I promoted, and kind of really started looking into it more, and the fire service is starting to come out with it more. So I know this is valuable time for you and running your city and all that, making decisions tonight. So thank you for taking a few minutes to share this with me. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, oh, I got the control now, don't I? If a picture is worth 1,000 words, this video should really catch your attention. Oh, we don't have the volume. There was a snap there. He walks over to his scooter, unplugs it, grabs his child, grabs his dog. Oh. It was 3.5 seconds, 3.4 seconds from the failure noise to that explosion inside your house. That's what we're dealing with nowadays. I would argue, I don't have the exact stats, but a vast majority of the fires I've had just previous to last year before promoting, more than half of them were battery contained or started fire, thermal runaway of these batteries. So what are these batteries? So here's the common look of them, right? These are the everyday ones we see and use all the time. Very normal, very non-reactive unless you get them in water, really stable, really nice batteries. The one exception is that 1220 battery, which is used in many, many devices, including vape pens and things like that. If it's made in a poor manufacturing process, they will degrade and cause issues. Here's some examples. These are vape pens in pockets. So you can see how violent they react. You know, there was an employee in Garden Grove. I was showing this to some of the Garden Grove staff, and he showed me a picture of his employee, and his leg was just completely burned up from a vape pen blowing up in his pants. So it's not just, it's all the different types of devices that lithium-ion batteries are part of. When you look at these batteries, this is what, you know, we started out with these, those are the more common ones, and then you get into the vehicles and what's the vehicles are using. So the battery on the left was developed by Tesla in 2005. That's the most common battery, and it's about the size of a cigar. Now that little scooter's got a handful of batteries in it. A Tesla has between 3,000 and 7,000 of those, as an example, to generate the power that a Tesla uses. So the larger the vehicle or device, the bigger the battery, or the more volume of batteries there will be in it. So Tesla's got that most common one. That's what everybody started using. And all your different mobility devices, those are the most common batteries. But through competition and everything else, you can see the other ones that were developed, the prismatic, the pouch, the 21700. There are other versions of the battery doing the same thing to create the energy needed for the device. That was just kind of through the competition that other people started coming up with stuff. Now, they all have pros and cons, but for this safety presentation, they all react the same way when they fail. And that's that violent reaction you saw in the videos. The problem with these batteries, the differences with them, is they don't need oxygen to burn. So A, they'll blow up on their own, whether they're plugged in or not. More commonly, they'll blow up when they're plugged in because they'll get overcharged, but they can blow up on their own if they were manufactured poorly and they degrade and have the reaction that you've seen there. So there is that potential. They burn extremely hot. They don't need oxygen to burn, so they're very hard to put out. So you can't just smother them because it's going to continue to generate its heat. So you have to cool them to put them out, or just let them completely burn and destroy themselves. And then when they do have that thermal runaway reaction, you saw how violent it is. And then another product that comes out of it is the smoke. It's a very, very, very toxic fluoride smoke that has been described to me as bone eating. So you don't want to get in the smoke. It's a serious hazard facing firefighters nowadays. We're adjusting our tactics and dealing with them, especially post-exposure. And we've had one member get retired off because of the smoke produced by these batteries. E-scooters, bikes, all that, hoverboards, that was the video that you saw and the different devices they came in. Here's a video that should catch your attention as well. The thing that you'll notice nowadays is cameras are everywhere, security cameras. We have them everywhere, inside houses, outside houses, garages. Remember the first time that I was kind of exposed to this was a fire in Santa Margarita, and it was a camera in a garage. So for some reason they had a camera inside the garage, and we watched a cordless drill being charged. We watched it fail and end up ultimately consuming the garage. We watched it all live on video. So here's another example of a mobility device. This poor guy's got it in his house. He does what we all do, react. He runs to go get some water, comes back to put the water on it. And when I tell you how these things fail, thank God he falls, because it blows, and that's 2,000 degree molten metal that's splashing on him.
Jeez.
So it just kind of continues. It's like a firework going off inside your house just over and over and over again as each one of these fail in sequence and explode. So when it comes to the cars, the issue with that is for us, we have vehicle fires all the time in normal combustion engine cars. So having a failure in a battery-powered car is not any different than the cause, like cars, right? It just fails because something went wrong with it. But the problem for us nowadays is putting them out. It'll take anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 gallons of water to put it out. And then it's not even guaranteed that it's out. They've been known to rekindle. In this slide, it says 7 days, and I got another one here. So it was over 2 weeks later that they restarted. So we get in the habit now of telling all the tow companies when we have an electrical vehicle that's been damaged, has a fire, or is a potential one, is to store it away in a corner, because we keep going back on rekindled fire in the tow parking lots. So that's the biggest issue we have with the cars, is trying to get to the batteries because they're underneath and inside the body of the car and not really accessible for us to get to and really cool down and put them out. Some of the agencies are getting a habit like this one. This was a 3-week one as an example up in Sacramento. They just dug a trench and filled it full of water and submerged it to put it in there for 24 hours to get it to finally go out, because it kept catching on fire. Europe has this, which is a tow-in trash dumpster kind of thing. They've converted it into a pool. They'll put the car in there and they'll fill it for 24 hours, fill it with water and submerge it for 24 hours. So I know some American agencies are starting to head this direction as well. This was an interesting one out of Florida after the hurricane that went through there. The salt water that flooded these Teslas, after the water receded, they started having multiple Tesla fires because the salt water got in there on the battery components, degraded it, caused the corrosion, and ultimately a bunch of vehicle fires in Teslas after the hurricane. New York has been very good at tracking their stats. I've created a new program in our stat system so that we're tracking it better now. You can see some of the comments here. A lot of what I've just said, how violent and fast they explode and hard to extinguish. I just had on my news feed on my phone the other day that the police department in New York just lost its entire evidence warehouse because a bike went off inside it. Huge warehouse, city block long kind of thing, and lost the entire thing. So they're having quite a few. So here's an example of e-bikes and how strong they are, and the difficulty of putting them out. Squirting water straight on it, it's not even touching it, and then more explosions. So it's literally like fireworks going off inside your house. London is showing, they're starting to talk about this. In China, where using e-bikes has been much more popular. In a 4-year history there, they tracked 10,000 electrical bike fires in that statistical period. New York, if I remember right, they've got 230% increase in battery-related fires in the last year, 2022, including 6 deaths. That picture right there is one of the fires I had just before promoting, and it was caused by a drone hobby enthusiast, and it started a battery fire, started his room on fire. That was one of the fires I had just before promoting. I grabbed a photo from. So what are we recommending here is this, we just came out of the holidays. your city manager and I were talking about this, the timing of this, and I'm sure a lot of people got a lot of new devices relating to that are being used for lithium-ion batteries over the holidays. So that was why the timing of this, taking some of your time tonight that we brought this out. Here's what OCFA and the Fire Service's recommendation. Only purchase and use devices and batteries that were made by that manufacturer for its device. And money matters. When you cut the corners on things and buy cheaper products, it matters, because those are not, in my studying of this, they're typically not made in clean room environments. So if they get any dust particles or anything in the manufacturing process, it makes them more prone to fail. May not be immediately, it may take a year or 2 or 3, but that cheaper product has a more liability factor of failing. Use only the batteries and chargers that were designed for that device. Once the device is charged, unplug it. Don't continue to keep it charging, because that can cause an overheat and failure. Store your bikes and scooters. Think about that, about where you're storing them. Probably not the best thing to do. Put it in your path of egress out of the house. Keep yourself safe there. Stop using any of these devices. If you hear hissing, popping, smelling smells that aren't right, see any white, clear gas, stop using them, turn them off, store them in a place that isn't a hazard to you. Obviously, don't throw your lithium-ion batteries away in the trash. Get them to the recycling centers, and make sure you only have people that are trained to repair them. Repair them. And then we do have a bunch of safety material at our website, ocfa.org. If anybody's interested, they can get these flyers. I know we've shared them with your staff. It is available, I believe, on your websites as well. City's been sharing that with your messaging. And this is a bike that down in Newport Beach is a photo and a news article of it just free burning out there in the sand. So it shows it wasn't plugged in, right? It can fail at any time, and is the current really big hazard that the fire service is facing and adjusting to. So that's the end of my presentation. It's tough to follow a presentation like our hero lifeguards, but I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but this is something that's really facing public safety right now, and I'm available to any questions should you have any.
Any questions?
That was really valuable information. When you were talking about Tesla and the batteries in a Tesla, you weren't specifically saying that that's the only car that blows up.
Correct. Any of the cars that's
Any of the
electrical can have
electric-
issues with it. And I'm not saying it happens any more often than a combustible engine car. The problem for us with those vehicles is really putting them out.
Yeah.
But yes, they can fail just like any combustible engine car.
From the video, if one explodes inside like that, what do you recommend doing?
Getting it.
Get out.
Get out.
You see how violent it is. You're not going to be able to put it out. I would not recommend going and picking it up, because the others are going to want to start doing it. Is just get out of the way and let us come help.
So if you have a electric vehicle, is it safe to store it in your garage, or?
Just like any other vehicle, yeah. I mean, we have plenty of regular car fires that happen in garages.
In garages,
I'm not
just
saying
without-
this is not a despairing thing on electrical vehicles. It's just the new hazard we're facing and the struggles with us putting them out. So, yeah, I'm not anti-Tesla or any other thing like that.
Or-
It's just more sounding the alarm of, we have this new potential.
Or if you have solar and you have a battery storage or something like that.
That's another-
Anything is, it just I just bought a gift this Christmas for a child that, it was like some kind of little clock, but it had glowy things, and it comes with the warning signs on it, and you don't expect,
Yeah.
so, and you have all your cell phones, they can.
That's correct.
Especially if you get a battery, a
There was some video I
replacement
didn't put
battery
in there.
that's-
There's videos of cell phones blowing up, overheated in cars or on people's desks. There's those videos as well. So anything that's plugged in has the potential to have this.
And the little charging banks or whatever you call them, those, and can they spontaneously just
Yes.
go? Oh, gosh,
Yes.
that's scary.
I know, I've reevaluated all my stuff. When I showed this to the city staff, everybody comes back, I'm unplugging everything at home, so, yeah, it's an unfortunate new reality that we have to be aware to, and why, when we discussed this, we thought it'd be valuable to bring it forward and the support of your public safety.
Thank you.
It's like the old VWs, the old had the magnesium engine blocks that,
They were hard to put out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
thank you,
Yeah.
Craig, very much. We appreciate it. Next, we'll have our management analyst, Lauren Barish, give us an update on the Historic Resources Foundation.
Did you take the clicker, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor, Council, and City Manager Ingram. I'm pleased to be joined this evening by Deb Matchin, the president of the foundation, as well as board members Lorenz Kruger and Linda Stouffer. And I will ask Deb to lead the update this evening. So Deb, when you're ready.
Can I take a few minutes? Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure to provide an update to council and our community this evening. While 2002 was a year of building the foundation from the ground up, 2003 will be a year of growth and community involvement. And I know everyone's probably as excited as we are about that. As you can see on this slide, the last year was very productive. We were very busy. That might not look like a lot, but in terms of hours and tears and figuring everything out from the ground up for the first time as a group that was kind of put together and have really, we've grown together in such an amazing way. We're a strong, cohesive group who figured out how to do all of this. While none of that was the most fun and exciting part of the foundation, we really did our research and worked hard to ensure that everything that we did was done in the right way in order to build a strong foundation of trust with the community. We know that that is what the community is hungry for, and so are we, and we are ready now to do that. So from receiving our nonprofit status to opening our office in Old City Hall, there were a lot of firsts this last year. One of the highlights for sure was receiving $10,000 in funding from the council. Thank you again so much. This funding is going to have a tremendous impact and allow us to really grow this year and share with the community and bring the community in to help us. And we're really excited about that. It's amazing, by the way, how much money it takes to do anything at this level of startup. So we really appreciate it. We also recently received 2 donations, which in addition to the city funding of $10,000, enables us to do many, if not all of the things we plan and need to do to get the word out this year and to share our rich history with the community. Okay, yeah, we switched slides. We received $1,000 donation from the Sarah Childs Kruger Foundation Charity Fund at the Long Beach Community Foundation. Thank you. We also received a $1,000 donation from Mayor Pro Tem Mike Verapapa. Thank you so much. And I think you'll all be excited to hear this. Wait for it. We have come to an agreement with the Lions Club regarding the transfer of the Red Car Museum. And we will be making a joint announcement and celebration for the whole community in the very near future. We're hoping February. So very excited about that. We will be launching our almost complete website very soon, which will provide the community with updates, membership opportunities, and the ability to donate physical and monetary treasures to the foundation to be shared with the community. We are in the process of purchasing insurance and donor fundraising software. We also have some really, I think same slide. We have some really unique sponsorship opportunities for businesses and individuals that will make even more Seal Beach history available to the whole community. One of these is the digitization and display of hundreds, maybe thousands, of local historical newspapers. So imagine you started your business in Seal Beach, or your family moved here in 1965. And wouldn't that be a great year to sponsor, covering the cost of digitizing it and making it available through our website, yes, but also Orange County websites and I think LA website, just all over, and so many people would be able to enjoy and appreciate our rich history in this way. And I think a lot of businesses and families would get on board, and we're very excited about it. And we can start taking your money as soon as we get that website up. So, we're also excited to host community events such as pop-up displays. That's something we've been super excited about from the beginning, and we're probably going to start around March or so of this year. We'll do so in local businesses, organizations, city facilities, and more. So look forward to that, and be sure and watch for our website. I'll be doing updates in the local paper as well. And that concludes our presentation. Do you have any questions? All right. Again, can't thank you guys enough for getting everything going for us, supporting us in so many ways. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Deb. All right, it's now time for oral communications. At this time, members of the public may address the council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on any items not on the agenda unless authorized by law. Matters not on the agenda may, at the council's discretion, be referred to the city manager and placed on a future agenda. Those members of the public wishing to speak are asked to come forward to the microphone and state their name for the record. All speakers will be limited to a period of 5 minutes. Speakers must address their comments only to the mayor and entire city council, and not to any individual member of the staff or audience. Any documents for review should be presented to the city clerk for distribution. So could we have our first speaker?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Lisa Landau, and I am candidate for Seal Beach City Council, District 3. I would like to thank the Seal Beach Police Department for their dedication to keeping our community safe. Thank you for your actions yesterday in apprehending someone that had nefarious intentions towards one of our youth. The thought of this happening in Seal Beach is really scary. And this should be a wake-up call for our parents to really monitor the internet usage of their children. As your council person, my #1 issue for our community is safety. Our community, our visitors, and especially our children, need to feel safe and protected when they're on Main Street, at the beach, and in our parks. According to last week's crime log in the Sun, there were 16 reports. 40% were transient related, and 20% were theft related. Police visibility is crucial in deterring potential criminal behavior. That visibility is also important in dealing with the homeless. While homelessness is not a crime, it is a safety issue. Not only can they be a threat to themselves, but a danger to others, including our children. Also, as thefts continue to be on the rise, That visibility will also be instrumental in prevention of crime. I also believe that we should bring back our Neighbor for Neighbor program. We have an amazing police department under great leadership, but they cannot be everywhere at every moment. As a community participating in Neighbor for Neighbor, we can be the extra eyes for our PD and our neighbors alike. We can watch out for one another and be there for if something does happen. As was taught to my son Cody at McGaw, you see something, say something. So let's help keep Seal Beach safe together. And if we do bring the Neighbor for Neighbor program back, I would like to volunteer to kick off being the block captain for Crestview. One other thing, I will also work tirelessly to bring Sarah's Light to fruition, to keep our community safe while crossing 12th and PCH in Sarah Kruger's memory for Sarah's family, Larry, and his children, so that we can prevent another tragedy at 12th and PCH. Thank you.
Evening, Mayor Kalmack, Mayor Pro Tem Vera Papa, council members. My name is Stephanie Wade. I think you may have heard I'm also running for city council in the 3rd district. But I just came because I wanted to speak this evening about 2 things. The first is, and I'll just take a moment to say congratulations and thank you to Lorenz and Deb Mention and the rest of the Historical Society, or the Historical Foundation, for really working with the Lions, getting the red car, moving so quickly. I think it's terrific that we're going to have like really first class, historical preservation here in our little city. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was the upcoming hearing this evening. I'm really glad that the staff is moving proactively to try and protect our city and its small town way of life and not get gutted out the way so many beach cities have by short-term rentals. And I'm anxious to hear the report and the resolution this evening, but I think we're on the right track. And I think the staff has done great work in figuring out how we can manage something that we can't really stop, but at least manage it for the benefit of our community, to keep it the place we love and a place where people really live, not just visit. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is the place where I really live, which is where it's really flooding. It's been flooding. We all know what's probably going to happen this evening. I know while I was sitting here, I got several texts from people who are inviting me and a couple other neighbors up to their homes on the hill because they're expecting flooding where I live on First Street. And one thing in particular, I know the last couple of days we had a pump out on 5th and Marina, was one of those hot spots, and the city was really good in getting it out there proactively. I know I heard from a business owner, and I was by myself today, and the pump isn't there, so I hope there's a plan, because that's a gravity-fed storm drain where those businesses on one side of Marina tend to flood if we don't have one of the temporary pumps in place. So at any rate, but I'm really glad that and looking forward to the city manager's report on the past flooding, and hope we'll be able to talk this evening on what we've got coming up to protect some of us who are really worried about flooding tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Andrea Lisi. I'm here to speak on the short-term rental proposed ordinance. I'm not sure if this is...
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Oh, sure. Andrea Lisi. I live on 15th Street.
Yeah. Pardon me?
Should I wait until after?
I was going to say,
Oh, okay.
because we will have public comment during the public hearing on that specific item,
Okay,
you might
okay,
want to wait.
thank you. I just wasn't clear. Thank you.
It was a good warm-up. Okay, any other folks want to speak? Okay, then we'll close oral communications. Next, we'll have our city attorney's report.
No report this evening, Mayor.
City Manager Ingram.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I have a couple items tonight. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge and congratulate our newly promoted Director of Public Works and City Engineer, Iris Lee. As all of you know, Iris stepped in May of last year is our acting Public Works Director and has done an incredible job. She also participated in a quite extensive and challenging and competitive recruitment process and undoubtedly rose to the top. So proud of her and so happy to have been able to appoint her as our new director. Second item I have is, all of you know, anytime we have any sort of more significant response, whether it's storm, weather, surf-related type response, then we will typically come to a council meeting, the next council meeting, and provide a high-level overview of the response. I know all of you are kept abreast with timely updates in terms of those responses and efforts, so you clearly know, but I think for the public's benefit, it's always good to repeat some of that. All of us know that predictions are just that. They're predictions, and they're not perfect. And so we prepare and respond to the degree and to the best that we possibly can, given the information that we know at the time. And of course, Mother Nature isn't always very forgiving. However, and I was having this conversation with the mayor on Friday with some of our staff team that was out on the beach and on the pier. You know, we're fortunate here that we have the depth of staff that we have that have been here for a significant number of years, that have the institutional knowledge that we all have individually and collectively, and as well as knowledge of our infrastructure and the number of events that we've responded to over the years, as well as many, many years of experience and technical expertise on our professional staff team that prepares and responds for these events. And after every event, you know, we talk about it here, but of course, internally, we talk extensively about lessons learned, and then we reset so that we can prepare for future events, because we know they're going to happen here, which is exactly what happened over the past couple of weeks. We haven't had a break. There's been storm after storm, and then we had the high surf event last Thursday night into Friday, and as we can hear, with more to come over the next week or so. The interdepartmental and mutual aid coordination and teamwork on behalf of our city, I can't say enough about it, along with our OCFA partners. Couldn't have been any more effective and successful than it was, aside from, of course, the impacts that we had on our pier. And so I want to take a moment before I turn this presentation over to a couple members of our staff team to talk tonight, really to acknowledge and recognize the members of my team who were integral in this preparation and response. Iris Lee, our newly appointed Public Works Director, and of course, multiple members of her Public Works, especially the maintenance team, that's been working 24 hours around the clock to provide coverage and response. Sergeant Brian Gray, who's with us tonight, who will also be talking with you, our emergency services coordinator, again, working 24/7 around the clock to monitor predictions and making sure that we had all of our resources in place. Our police chief, Michael Henderson, Marine Safety Chief Joe Bailey, Marine Safety Lieutenant Chris Pierce, OCFA Division I Chief Craig Covey. You will hear about that. Of course, those of you that were down there know that he ensured that we had dozer crews and equipment down on our beach in a moment's notice to provide response to us. Our finance director, Barbara Arnado, making sure that we were properly accounting for all of our staff time so that hopefully we can get some sort of FEMA reimbursement. And especially wanted to acknowledge our CERT team who had members out this morning out in the cold and wind and providing volunteer time to prepare sandbags for use by our businesses and residents. And so having said that, I will turn the presentation over initially to Director Lee to provide some initial comments, and then I would encourage members of my team, especially those of you that have been integrally involved in this response for this particular incident, to feel free to step in, provide any additional comments, and of course, council, we'd be happy to address any questions that you might have. Iris?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram. Good evening, Honorable Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, and City Manager Ingram. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this winter storm update. And just as City Manager Ingram mentioned, members of the staff will be chiming in to augment any material that I will be presenting tonight. So just as a quick recap of the series of events, starting with pre-Christmas, when we had the king tides on December 23rd to 24th, and then followed by the New Year's Eve storm, and then the storm that we had last Wednesday, where even though we had no water breach over the sand berm, it was quite a bit of water that we got. And then following the Thursday and Friday event, post-rain event, where we had high surf measuring sets of 15 feet and higher, we did hear from our marine safety team that this is probably the highest we have had in the past 15 years. So first, I want to start with a quick summary of our preparation efforts. A series of interdepartmental coordination meetings, including OCFA, were held to prepare for the events. OCFA proactively allocated resources to the area in anticipation of. Correspondence with the county, OC Sheriff's Office were also had. Emergency staffing were on standby if and when appropriate resources needed to be deployed. Sand berms, the winter sand berm along our beach, along First Street were fortified on the 4th, right before the storm as well. West End Pump Station, this was checked for operations and staffed at any time there's a rain event. And for those in the audience and anybody who is watching at home who are not familiar with the West End Pump Station, this is a critical storm water infrastructure as it receives storm water from the Hill and the Old Town neighborhood. And without it properly functioning, the city will not be draining properly. Portable pumps were deployed per our rain event protocols. Road and parking lot closure signs were also placed, strategically placed, in case that we ever needed to close a certain portion of the city. And sandbag stations were made available at the 8th Street parking lot, Fire Station 44, and the City Yard. And as City Manager Ingram just mentioned, our CERT team made pre-filled sandbags available for the public to pick up at the 8th Street parking lot today. And as you see on the picture, everybody is happy to do so, including Yosa. And public notification was disseminated through various channels such as Nixle, Alert OC, press releases, and social media. And if you're not already following Seal Beach's social media sites such as Seal Beach PD, Seal Beach Lifeguards, and Seal Beach Public Works, highly recommend you to do so. We send some great information out through those channels as well. And finally, we set protocols for beach closures. And on Thursday evening, which is January 5th, around shortly after 8 p.m., the pier was closed due to high surf. And this was a timely and proper closure as we did sustain damage at the pier soon thereafter, or that night. So we did sustain some impact, but we are happy to report that the preparation work did pay off to safeguard the city. Aside from the pier, it doesn't appear that we have property damage and injuries. The sandberm needed to be reinforced closer to the Navy side of the beach, but thankfully, OCFA was able to redirect resources to reconstruct the berm at moment's notice. Flooding did take place at the 1st, 8th, and 10th Street parking lots. Channels were created and pumps were deployed to help divert the water. At the pier, the boat ramp was disconnected from the pier. Approximately 10 piles and other structural members were dislocated or damaged. Some of these piles were found on the beach and been relocated, and some that were in the water were removed by the contractors on Friday, January 6th, and you'll see a picture following up of that operation. It appears that those piles were not part of the reconstructed portion of the piers. Nevertheless, structural assessments are being conducted right now. However, the pier will remain closed until we can assure and confirm that it is safe for public use. I do want to note that the pier damages are not isolated to Seal Beach, and other piers and wharfs have suffered damages along the California coastline. I'm sure many of you have already seen the Capitola Wharf over at Santa Cruz and Ocean Beach Pier, just to name a couple. And finally, we are resetting our storm preparation in anticipation of more upcoming rain. So these are a few quick pictures, and it's not comprehensive by any means, but it does show the magnitude of the event that just took place on Thursday and Friday of last week, January 5th and 6th. Top left picture is of the pier restroom area. Did receive quite a bit of water, but we were again fortunate to have OCFA help us create channels to divert the water, where the majority of the water was dissipated towards the end of the day. Bottom left picture, a snapshot of the First Street parking lot area. Center photo is of our operators, our crane operators, being contractors, removing the pile and a cross member from the water. And I do want to take a quick moment to thank Nick Bolin from Marine Safety for guiding the in-water operations on Friday. Top right picture, some water that had breached a sand berm. And the bottom right is another snapshot of flooding that took place in the parking lot fronting lifeguard headquarters. So on January 4th, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency. And on Sunday, January 8th, a request was submitted to the White House for presidential emergency declaration to support ongoing storm response and recovery efforts. This means that there is a possible chance that the city may be eligible for emergency expense reimbursement from the winter storm. We're tracking all possible areas of reimbursement, including overtime, equipment, field costs, any other rentals, contractor costs, and consultant costs. So this next slide here, I just want to caveat that I am not a meteorologist by any means. So we do have Emergency Services Coordinator Brian Gray in the audience also. So if I do misspeak at any time, Brian, please chime in. So the following information is information that we have obtained from the National Weather Services on January 9th, which is today, this morning. So just as a quick recap, Brian, would you like, did you want me to?
I can jump in. I was on that webinar call with Director Lee this morning. We're going to have heavy rain tonight, as I'm sure you guys started to hear it. The estimate for Orange County and the coastal regions total is between 1 inch and 2.5 inches during the whole event, so tonight into tomorrow. While that may sound like a lot, the rate is estimated up to 0.6 inches an hour. We kind of have a threshold of 1 inch an hour where that would set off all the bells and whistles and alarms. But at a 1/2 inch, we can still get inundated in some of those problem areas in town. There could be some standing and pooling water. Thankfully, as Director Lee has up there, the surf, and I defer to Chief Bailey, but the surf 3 to 6 feet, much lower than we had last weekend when the pier was damaged. So I'm confident. Actually, I'm not confident of anything. I don't want you guys to hold me to it. But it's going to be wet. I'd advise everybody to stay in if they can. If you have to go out, drive slow, take normal precautions. After that, after this early this week, we are looking at a couple, they call it atmospheric rivers, which are these thin bands of moist air. And the big deal with those, you probably heard it on the news, it's a hot topic, is they travel very quickly. So these bands full of moist air travel much quicker and can bring moisture and hence the rain. The National Weather Service is very adamant that when you start looking at the weather far out, it's less reliable. So as we get closer, we'll get more reliable info. But a couple more storms sitting in the off the Pacific. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Do want to mention that towards the end of the month, January 21st, 22nd, we are anticipating some king tides. We're expecting about 6.8 more or less, and that's going to be occurring in the morning on the 21st and 22nd. Hopefully the storm that Brian was just mentioning that's in the horizon on the 18th and 20th doesn't scoot over to the 21st and 22nd, so fingers crossed on that. Overall, we're expecting weather conditions, weather condition than normal during the January, February, but we will come back with more updates momentarily or as they become available. So before I turn it over to question and answers, I do want to take a quick moment to really thank everybody that came to us for assistance. As you know, we run on a very lean staff, so we heavily rely on external resources during these times of emergencies. Wanted to start off with OCFA that took the lead with the sandberm reinforcement and water diversion efforts, especially OCFA Chief Covey there for being with us every step of the way. Our contracting team that we have an amazing working relationship for that dropped everything at a moment's notice and putting our pier as a priority. And most importantly, all the city staff who worked tirelessly giving up their Christmas dinners and ringing into New Year's Eve or just time off to address the city's emergency needs. So thank you, everybody. So this concludes our winter storm update, and the team is available for questions.
Questions? No.
Do we know how much damage was done to the pier and when we'll know?
The assessment is being conducted this week, and we are waiting for safer water conditions to conduct that assessment, and we will be back with a rough order of magnitude thereafter.
And are the pump stations all working properly, and they started when the storm started?
West End Pump Station is functional, and we do have staff there to make sure that they do cycle on and off at appropriate times.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions. I just have a comment, and I just want to say I appreciate the rain event updates from the police department and from the city manager. Sometimes they're hourly, sometimes they're daily. Obviously, the less we see them, the better it is. But we do appreciate it. So thank you for that. Also, the press releases from Captain Nicholas, really good information. So thank you for that.
I do want to mention that I saw Brian Gray on Channel 7 News today. He was out by the sandbags, and it only showed the back because he was instructing people what to do. But I just wanted you to know that I recognized you by the distinct color of your hair. And now you're famous.
I would like to also reiterate the thanks to all of our in-house staff. They're great people, and they care about our city. And so whenever we have an emergency like this, there's no hesitation. And regardless of the time of day or night, I want to also thank again Chief Covey. The response from Orange County Fire, we had 3 pieces of heavy equipment that were doing a lot of work simultaneously, and I think that went a long way towards keeping any flooding damage from doing any damage. And I've been through, over the last 50 years or so, all of the different storms from 1983 when the pier went down to what we've experienced this past week, and they're all different. So in terms of predicting what's going to happen and what we can reasonably predict, you can't always do that. I mean, this particular storm system brought all the water to the west side of the pier. We never built berms down at the First Street beach. We never had the parking lots flooded like that. The water always came over the berm at 12th Street and at Dolphin, and I knew something was happening because I'd look out my front door and the boardwalk had 9 inches of water on it, and I was deciding whether I should have put sandbags out. I think that all in all, we seem to be doing a better and better job of coordinating the emergency and responding to the emergency. And I think that speaks to the results that we've had so far, which is no damage, no loss of life, and we just keep preparing. Ultimately, someday, when the cards are all falling in our favor, we'll be able to spend at this point, probably $200 million that it'll take to redo our storm drain system. But in the meantime, this is what we have to do. So again, thanks to everybody that participated.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes my comments tonight.
Okay. Council comments. We'll start with you.
Okay. I've attended a couple of the mosquito vector control meetings. We're still struggling with the issue of what to do with the on-site facilities and how to make them more efficient and how to make them more modern. They've been there for many decades. It's been there many decades. It's time to redesign and rethink what's there, and we're still struggling with that, and it'll go on into the next year and the year after because of the money issue. The other one I wanted to mention is the sanitation, Orange County Sanitation District. The general manager is retiring this month, and the new one is coming in. His name is Rob Thompson, and he's been with OC San for 35 years, worked his way up to the top, and now he gets all the headache. So congratulations to him. And it's a remarkable organization, run very well, and in fact, their vice president in charge of finance lives in Seal Beach, and he does a fantastic job. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Tom?
Thank you. And excited to see Iris Lee as their new director for Public Works. Very professional, hardworking, and I think she'll be great. And thank you for the presentation on the update of the storm. And I also agree that it's nice to get the hourly updates for the storm, and we always kind of know what's going on. And OCFA and the staff did a great job preparing. I went to the swearing in of the police chief a few weeks ago, and excited again there that we promoted from within and promoted several other officers from within. I think that is a good morale for the whole police department and for the city. Very high quality individuals, and very excited about all the promotions. And also went to a Chamber of Commerce Christmas event, and I thought I was going to win ugly sweater, but I didn't. And I hope everyone had a nice Christmas and Happy New Year. Thanks.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Shelley?
Let's see. I also wanted to thank PD for their rain updates. I appreciate them very much, knowing what's going on, or sometimes I don't have to go out there if it says everything's fine, but, and all of Public Works, I know they're working really hard, so I appreciate all that. I also went to the swearing-in ceremony of Chief Henderson, really nice, really nice event. It was nice to be able to get together and recognize all the officers and staff. I attended a Los Alamitos Planning Commission meeting, and I wanted to report that in my newsletter that just came out Saturday and today. I reported that there would be a scoping meeting for the Old Ranch Country Club Development Project on January 25th, and that meeting has been postponed. There's no date, new date set yet, but continue to look at the city website, the Sun newspaper, nextdoor.com, and my newsletter, and we'll keep you updated for when that meeting is rescheduled. And that's all. Thank you.
I don't have anything this week. I've been busy watching for storms. Thank you. Okay, so we have no council items. Next is the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and are enacted by a single motion, with the exception of items removed by council members, and there were none. I'll now call for a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Verapapa?
Yes.
Councilmember Sistarsik?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Masalabat?
Yes.
And Mayor Kalmick?
Yes.
Motion carries 5 votes yes.
Thank you. Okay. Moving right along. Okay, our next item is item L, which is going to be a public hearing regarding short-term rentals. And this will be reported on and led by our Community Development Director, Alexis Smittle.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and good evening to the council. If I could get the presentation pulled up, that'd be great. Thank you, Chief. One more. There you go. Perfect. So tonight we are discussing short-term rentals. There we go. Okay. The City of Seal Beach's current zoning code prohibits short-term rentals in the residential zone. A short-term rental is the rental of a housing unit for 29 or less days, and these are commonly associated with online platforms like an Airbnb or a Vrbo. The city currently has 14 vacation rental units that have a conditional use permit to operate. Those were issued about a decade ago, and they continue to operate today. And I want to just start off this presentation by saying everything we're going to discuss regarding a new short-term rental program will not involve those units. Those conditional use permits run with the land, and they will not need to be a part of this new program. They continue to exist as they are. We do occasionally have some unpermitted rentals. We do scans of, the Airbnb website from time to time. And in the summer, you see, anywhere from 30 to 40. And then in the winter, there's typically less. We looked into December, there were about 20, give or take. And those do include the legal rentals, those 14 rentals. So at the moment, we're not in a position where we're just overrun by a bunch of unpermitted short-term rentals. This item is in front of you tonight due to 2 recently published appellate court cases within the state that found that short-term rentals cannot be prohibited in the coastal zone by a local jurisdiction. So as a result, on September 26th, this council took action to suspend enforcement of the section of the zoning code and directed staff to come back with a program for short-term rentals. Tonight's item amends the zoning code to allow for a limited number of short-term rentals within the coastal zone. The draft ordinance was previously considered by the Planning Commission in November, and minor adjustments were made as a part of the recommendation. I'll discuss those in a moment. This is an unusual circumstance for a zoning amendment because following the City Council approval, staff will need to pursue a coastal development permit with the Coastal Commission. And I want to say just briefly on that, I want to distinguish between the court case rulings and the Coastal Commission. The court case rulings had a very broad statement about not prohibiting short-term rentals in the coastal zone. However, the Coastal Commission itself does allow for limitations, and we see those examples up and down the coast where different communities limit the number of short-term rentals. I do want to mention that in talking with coastal staff, it's very clear that they view each community differently based on their unique circumstance. And so how they're going to evaluate us against the Coastal Act or in comparison with any of our neighbors, we don't know that yet. We will start the permit process following council action and work with their staff and just see where we go. So in the meantime, this is what's being proposed by staff that we will present to the Coastal Commission staff and work with them. These are the key issues that are brought up in the rules, if you will, of the ordinance. Short-term rentals will be limited to the coastal zone or south of Westminster Boulevard. Per Planning Commission recommendation, we are starting small at 25 units. Staff had previously proposed limiting the total number of units to 1% of the housing stock within the coastal zone, which would have equated to 45 units. However, when the Planning Commission looked at this item, they considered staff's recommendation and proposed starting the program at a more conservative number, knowing it's always possible to increase the program, but that we would need to work this through the Coastal Commission process. And to that end, the Planning Commission also recommended the program be reviewed by council no later than 18 months after adoption of the program to evaluate the performance and consider adjustments. The 25 units would be net new rental units, as the program does not apply to the existing vacation units. So all inclusive, we would have up to 39 short-term rentals that would be operational. We're proposing to only allow one rental per owner. And this is our attempt at discouraging outside investors coming in and purchasing a bunch of units or a large multifamily property and making them all short-term rentals. Units intended to supply permanent, affordable housing will not be eligible for short-term rentals, and this would include any deed-restricted units with affordability covenants. Any junior accessory dwelling units, this is also prohibited by state law for them to be short-term rentals. And ADUs that are built after the state implementation of the new laws that allow ADUs by right. The intent of those laws from the state was to supply affordable housing, not to make a bunch of miniature hotels. The program would require that the owners identify a local contact person that's available to respond to issues 24 hours a day and bring the unit and our guests into compliance with our regulations. Large events such as weddings, large parties, corporate events, those would be prohibited within the rentals. In alignment with health and safety codes at the state level, the number of persons in the unit must not exceed 2 people per bedroom plus 2. So for example, a 2-bedroom unit could have a total of 6 occupants. The rules for the unit and city codes would need to be posted within the unit in clear view of the tenants. And the exterior of the unit must not market itself as a short-term rental. In terms of how the units would be determined, staff is proposing a programmatic approach which would be developed with timelines, and those wishing to host a short-term rental would submit a preliminary application, sort of an interest application in becoming a short-term rental. Once they're preliminarily vetted, first of all, are you in the coastal zone, that type of thing, they would be placed in a lottery drawing with set dates that we would advertise, and applicants would be drawn in a lottery fashion up to the 25 units. Now, we don't know how many applications we'll get. There may not be 25. We don't know until we try. And I do want to clarify that on an annual basis, these permits would be eligible for renewal provided they didn't have egregious violations of the code. So the lottery is a one-time event to start the program. This is not an annual event. Short-term rental owners, just like the existing short-term rental owners, must have a business license and pay transient occupancy taxes at the 12% rate. As a part of the permit process, staff would confirm the appropriate insurance and identification documents were in place. And homeowners associations may continue to enforce their own provisions for prohibition of short-term rentals. For example, Heron Point and Surfside both currently prohibit short-term rentals. There are some benefits that could come with an increase in short-term rentals. People staying here for vacation will visit our local shops and restaurants and support those businesses. We would see an increase in revenues, particularly from transient occupancy tax. Based on the revenues that are generated by our existing vacation rentals, we could see an increase of about $70,000 a year for an additional 25 units. And we will hopefully be in compliance with the Coastal Act. As I mentioned, it's hard to tell how long it will take to work with the Coastal Commission and their staff to get through this process, but it's just a path we march forward on. Secondly, I do want to mention that there are neighborhood concerns about the impacts that short-term rentals might have on neighborhoods where you have strangers regularly in and out of properties near you. So we definitely looked at what other communities are doing for their ordinances and tried to piece all those things into the rules to create as stable of an environment as possible with things that are easily enforceable. But as we've discussed before, there are limited staffing resources, so those early months may be challenging to keep everyone in line, but we will certainly do our best to maintain our neighborhood's integrity. The final thought that I want to share with you on this is that this, while we're doing this as a result of these court cases, this is not an isolated issue. This is a housing issue, and it must be integrated into our city's housing element. The dozens and dozens of state laws that have been passed over the last few years have all been aimed at increasing the number of housing units that are available for housing. So with the idea that more units means the cost of housing will come down and become more affordable and more readily available. It's a very simplistic approach, just build, build, build. That has been what the state has, the message they've been delivering to us for many years. So this means that when housing becomes available for short-term rental use as opposed to regular long-term occupancy use, then we're no longer offering people a place to live, and that puts us in opposition with what the State Department of Housing is telling us is necessary for housing element certification. So staff has very serious concerns about the repercussions of this, and it's a driving reason why we are supporting a conservative and limited program at this time. And with that, I am available for questions.
Questions? Tom?
Yeah, did you say the 1% would be how many units?
1% of the units in the coastal zone is 45 units.
And do you think there would be an issue, I guess, with coastal on that the limited amount that we're proposing?
I don't know. Other communities limit their units as well. But my conversation with their staff, we of course call and ask, can you give us a little bit of a roadmap? Can you give us some direction? And they didn't, but I can tell you they, will certainly look at things like the existing infrastructure to support, affordable accommodations. We only have one hotel within the coastal zone, and I think it's about 71 rooms. So, there'll be different pieces of information that they'll look at, but I don't know where they will land.
Do you think there's current rentals that we don't know about and that are
yeah, absolutely. There are current rentals we don't know about. And as I mentioned, we do try to chase some of them down, particularly if there are complaints that come forward from neighboring residents, for example. But for the most part, when we go online and just search Airbnb, it's not an overwhelming number.
Okay. From a legal standpoint, when we looked at this last, it was because of the lawsuit. How does this jive with responding to that?
The ordinance itself jives. The ordinance is responsive to those two court cases. The issue you've raised about the limit or the number of units that are to be permitted in the coastal zone, there isn't any precedent. There isn't any regulation that we can look at that says it has to be 1%, it has to be 0.5%. All we can do is justify, as the director has done, the number that the Planning Commission recommended or the number that the council decides on if it is. But I do think the adoption of the ordinance with the allowances for these units and the regulations on their use that the staff has proposed does fall within those court decisions and the Coastal Act.
And what about this hosted and non-hosted? Can you respond to some of those?
Yeah, I can do that. I've read multiple ordinances from other cities. The other cities have parsed out a hosted unit versus a non-hosted unit. So a non-hosted unit is there's nobody there. You go, you check in. Your family is staying in that house.
Okay.
A hosted unit means that there's someone else there on the property at all times. It's as if you've got someone occupying one room and the rest of the residence is open for the tenants.
So this doesn't distinguish between
It does not, no.
Okay, thank you.
I would ask, could we have a concerted effort to reach out to the known non-permitted VRBOs or STRs and offer them the ability to become, a legal entity, and remind them that if they choose not to do that, that our code enforcement efforts will be stepped up, and remind them what the fines might be for operating illegally.
Certainly, we can do that, and we'll do our very best to, encourage people to apply and be a part of the process, especially if we are looking at a lottery. We want everyone to know they have this opportunity and, not come back and say they didn't. So we will definitely try to get the word out as much as possible. We do know, sometimes a listing will tell you exactly where a unit is located by how they're describing it, but sometimes it's, you can just kind of see it's in this general area. So we don't know exactly where all of them are.
And have we had many inquiries from real estate folks who are looking to either convert existing rental units to short-term rentals?
Yeah, it's interesting because when we first brought this to council in September, after those court cases were fresh and they were getting a lot of press, we were getting a number of phone calls, and they have since very much dissipated. So I don't know what our response will be. Like, for example, even having this, come up before the council, I only received a couple of phone calls in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
I had a quick question. You talked about the HOA. Can you elaborate a little bit more? What were you saying about they would have their own rules and regulations, basically?
Correct. The state does not explicitly direct HOAs to require short-term rentals be allowed. So those HOAs that prohibit short-term rentals of, out of their own, private property association rights are allowed to continue to do so.
So would Bridgeport fall into that category?
That I don't know.
Okay. Maybe we can look into that.
We'd have, see if they want to share that information.
Thank you.
Shelley? Okay. I remember back when we went to the moratorium on these, some of the complaints that were expressed, and I like a lot of the rules that you made seems to address quite a few of the issues that were outstanding at that time. I also did watch the Plan Commission meeting, and I appreciate all the conversation that went on this issue. I did have a question. When we get a coastal development permit and we say it's going to be 25, but we maybe decide later that we're going to increase it, does that create a problem, or?
I don't think it creates a problem. My guess would be, if they approve us for 25 units and we come back and, say we're just, anyone can have a short-term rental unit. I don't think the Coastal Commission would object to that. Would we need to amend our permit? Yes, I believe there'd be a process for that.
Okay. And how are the rules are they similar between those with a CUP and these with a permit?
Generally, yes. Mhm.
Pretty close?
Yeah,
Okay.
I started with that ordinance when I built this.
Oh, okay. Let's see. And if they're not following the rules, I heard you say like 3 strikes and you're out or something like that. So if they're not following the rules, we can get them out of the permit, and that's not a horrendous process to do that?
Our intention is to set it up that way, that yes, your permit can be revoked.
Okay, and the question after that is, will there be a waiting list, or would you have a lottery then, or how do you,
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
How I would set it up for this first time around is we would throw everyone in the lottery, and let's say we had 100 applicants, we would pull all 100 and start our waiting list at number 26.
Oh, okay.
And then if other people want to join the wait list, they just get put at the bottom.
And they just get put on, okay, because that was my question. Those who got in first are in better shape. Okay, let me see if there was anything else. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
With regard to parking, does the Coastal Commission address or care about the potential impact on parking in the coastal zone when, let's say, you have a single-family dwelling with 4 bedrooms that has mom and dad and 2 kids and 3 cars, to where now you have 12 people, 3 families, and at least 3 or more cars showing up? That would certainly be something that we as a city would be concerned about. Does that play into their thinking when you've spoken with them, or that's just?
It hasn't come up as a topic, so I don't know. But generally speaking, our residential zoning code, has certain requirements for on-site parking, and we would hope for the best, because yes, you're absolutely right, especially when you're looking at a vacation rental unit, it doesn't necessarily mean that one family is coming in 1 car. You see multiple family members coming, yes. So there would be parking impacts.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay, then I will.
Sort of drawn by this number 25. It's kind of an arbitrary number, I think, that the Planning Commission came up with. I didn't listen to the meeting, but so if we decide on 25, next year there's another 25 that want to come in. The first 25 are in forever, as long as they want.
As long as they want, and as long as they behave.
The other thing is, we don't know how long the Coastal Commission is going to take to prolong the actual acquisition of a permit from the city. If the
That's
Coastal
correct.
Commission follows its usual timeline, it could be a year.
It could be, I agree. The good thing about the program, for better or worse, is that it is easily scalable.
Yeah.
So we can start here, or if the council, would like to go with a different direction or a different number, but it certainly is easy to add on. I think the program itself is a reasonable approach to how we would manage short-term rentals.
Well, maybe 25 is an appropriate number to start with. I hate this whole idea of Airbnbs anyway, but given everything that's happened, 25 could be a reasonable number, because if there are 30 that make application, we could modify our ordinance to max it out at 30, and then at 35. I mean, this could go on until the whole 1% is used up.
And keep in mind that 25 is actually 39, right? We start with a reservoir of 14.
That's true, I don't,
go
but they don't
from there.
get counted, do they?
There,
The 25.
There's still a short-term rental existing in the coastal zone, but they are not subject to this new program.
Right, so they're really not figured into the 25, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
No,
they're
I'm
not a
just
part of
saying,
the 25.
as a practical matter, in terms of getting close to that 1%, if that's a magical number, and I don't think that
Yeah.
it is, in reality, the number of permitted units in the city would be 39. And the other thing, in terms of the timing of the Coastal Commission's review of the city's permit application, of course, it's in their interest to move it more quickly, because this is something the Coastal Commission wants to promote. And I know you know that
It's out of character
it's
for
out
them
of
to-
character for them, but also it would be impossible for them to maintain, not impossible, unlikely for them to maintain an enforcement action against the city when the city's application for a coastal permit is sitting, waiting for Coastal Commission approval. So that's why staff is pushing for the development of the program, get a permit application on file, and then let them take the time that they take to process the permit.
Okay. Thank you.
And it does give us the opportunity to evaluate the effect on the coastal zone, Old Town basically, and see whether 25 plus the existing 14 has a greater or lesser impact on parking and congestion and, you know, any of the issues that sometimes go along with vacation rentals. You know, the benefit of the TOT is very tangible, but I think that I don't think we should be making a decision on establishing a large number of vacation rentals just by looking at what the potential TOT is.
Can we actually vote on this tonight if the ordinance doesn't make a finding of for CEQA?
You have a
corrected?
You have a corrected version in front of you.
And it was advertised appropriately and made
Yeah,
it-
this is only introduction of the
okay.
ordinance, and we're not recommending that the council find that the ordinance is exempt from CEQA. That was an editing error, so you have a revised version in front of you that the only change it makes is to the title of the ordinance and the language at the end regarding the CEQA finding. There's no substantive change to the ordinance. And again, this is only introduction if you decide to do so after the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, any other? Okay, then I'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and anybody that wishes to speak, please come forward. It's you again.
It is. Good evening, Andrea Lisi. I live on 15th Street in Old Town, and I submitted the comment letter earlier today, and thank you for those of you who took the time to read it. I realize I'm probably the lone voice of actually urging staff and the council to take a little more time with this STR ordinance and really distinguish between habitable and non-habitable short-term rentals because, you know, for obvious reasons, for those of you who've stayed in Airbnbs or, you know, VRBOs, as I have a lot for work, a lot of times you have Ring doorbells, cameras that the landowner can monitor. If you have someone who's actually living on site, say in the back accessory dwelling unit, and they're able to rent out their main house for short periods of time during the year. Other ordinances like Dana Point that I pointed out in the letter in Long Beach allow for 30 to 60 days a year. It can be a real benefit to subsidizing someone's income for whatever quality of life reasons, but it also can be monitored well because the property owner has a vested interest in making sure the neighbors aren't pissed off by all the noise, or if there is any large event, that they're able to monitor how many people are coming and going. I recently stayed in an Airbnb in Sacramento where they said no more than 4 people. It was a 2-bedroom home. And there was a Ring doorbell, and, you know, the owner, I could tell, can see who's coming and going, and so it worked out fine. I think a lot of people, you know, the initial early days of Airbnbs are not what it is today. So with a well thought out, you know, detailed program, and I think staff has done, you know, a lot of good work here in what's before you tonight, but I see potentials for refinements and tuning. And the Coastal Commission recently approved Dana Point's short-term ordinance in November. That included parking restrictions, a minimum number of off-site parking for specific numbers of people that are allowed, and I think they only allowed 10 people per unit maximum. You know, and they looked at it citywide as well, I think, because if you're charging 13% TOT tax revenue and you're allowing 1% of, you know, non-habited short-term rentals in your city, that can generate large sums of revenue. Like my letter pointed out in Santa Barbara, they realized about over $1 million in 2015. Granted, that's a larger city. We're not Santa Barbara, I get that. But with today's dollars and rentals, if done right, it could be a win not only for the property owners, but also for the city to use that, you know, non-restricted revenue for other projects, you know, like a new lifeguard station in a building or pool or whatnot. And, you know, hopefully without causing the chief more work at the same time. So I just want to urge the council to give this some additional consideration and thought, and if there's others who are of my like-mindedness, or if staff in the council is willing to allow me to have additional input into the process, I'd welcome that. I don't want to see the city also wasting time and resources going to Coastal Commission, maybe without them ultimately approving the CDP. And then I think it took Dana Point like 5 months, from what I could tell, from their initial ordinance submittal to when they had to make amendments to make Coastal Commission staff happy, to go back then to get it approved. And then they had to revise the ordinance. So I think, you know, while it might take a little more time up front, it's the winter time, so we don't necessarily have a bunch of people necessarily wanting to come stay like we do in the summer times. And maybe putting a little more time and thought into this, talking with Coastal Commission staff some more, and I'm happy to help be a pain in their side if it helps. You know, to propose something that at least we can maybe get staff's preliminary buy-off on and move forward. Because there are a lot of interests to consider. And I'm not saying pro short-term residents, you know, no conditions. That certainly isn't anything any of us want. But I think it could be a win for all if we take a little more time here on the front end. So if there's any questions for me, if not, I will go keep Yosa company. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Kai Osti, and my wife and I, Elena, live in Seal Beach. We have a couple vacation rentals. Tonight, I didn't know, Iris, you were going to be here, but I said if I ever meet you, I want to thank you for fixing my gutter on Ocean Avenue. So the water sat there for 2 years, so thank you. Mayor Joe, I want to thank you because we went to, I think someone here is from the fire department. We went and got sandbags tonight, so thank you for having them there. So I'm a big firm believer of thanking people that help each other, and we love this city, and I know some of you up there, and you've been helpful to us. And so the vacation rental, and I guess I'll thank you. You probably put it in the paper. That's why we came tonight. I don't really know what I'm going to say, but I just want to share with you. In 2008, almost 15 years ago, when we all had to come and talk to you, there was a lot put to us to make sure we followed some rules, made some things happen, and I think we've done a good job of it, at least the 14 of us, and it's been 15 years, not 10. And God bless you, you said some things up there that you used the word enforce a couple times. I hope you do it, because it's heartbreaking for my wife and I when we check someone in, we say, you're now the neighbor. We don't allow parties, smoking, anything. Sometimes people tell us we have too many rules, and I say, hey, the rules are there to help us, help the city, help the neighbors, and I think it's very important. We know a lot of people in Seal Beach that have illegal vacation rentals. You don't do anything to enforce it, and you need to know that. So I'm not attacking you, but I think it's hard for you to find them, and I do believe that. But and I'm sorry that you don't like them, because I was here 15 years ago in front of you, and you peppered us with a lot of questions. And I think those 14, 15 people that do have them, we do a good job. And I would think from the police department, you've never had anyone of those 14 have any issues. So we try hard with that. So I like your energy and maybe saying, let's talk more about it. But, someone else in the room tonight is one of our guests at our house, I think a year and a half ago, that I didn't know was going to be here. And this person in the room loves Seal Beach so much, he bought a home here with his family. So our vacation rentals, we encourage things with restaurants. We have gift cards that sometimes they give, people come. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we try very hard. I'm tormented a little bit what we had to go through in 2008, because the CUP, you're not asking people to do that now. And that was very expensive. So I'm curious to see if you're going to have people do that. But if those people that you're going to bring on, make them have a business license. You use the word enforce, so I hope that you're going to do it. And I hope everyone in the city is going to do it, because those of us that give taxes, those of us that make it work, I just want to see it work for everybody. When we did this 2008, Ellery Deaton had the City News come out, and they knocked on my door and they said, what do you think about the 14 of you? And I said, I don't think it's fair. I'm a firm believer of sharing it for everybody, but my biggest concern was the rules. Have rules, follow them, and if I can follow them, other people can. It'll make a better outcome. So I'll stop talking, but thank you for all you do in here, and we love Seal Beach, and I think a lot of our guests do as well. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, then we'll close the public hearing. Do we have any final comments from council in terms of what direction that we'd like to go or not? And then we'll... Tom?
Yeah. I'm just wondering if it makes sense to, I mean, there's 14 grandfathered and there's 45 is 1%. If you subtract, that's 31. If we go to 25 to 31, if that helps us from optics to say, you know, we're at the 1%. It's only 6 units difference.
But is the 1% just part of the general conversation with Coastal Commission, or is this a number that they are sticking to and that they're somehow going to want to enforce for every city within the coastal zone?
1% is something that we have seen in other communities, but have they just said it's 1% and that's the number? No. So I how they are going to evaluate us, I don't have the answer to that.
So I guess my suggestion would be just increase it by 6, and then we propose it with the language that it's closer, it's 1%. Because that kind of matches with.
You're saying the 45 includes the
Yeah.
existing ones, but.
So it's 6 more,
They've been existing.
6 more units.
So 31 to be a part of this program,
Yeah.
plus the 14.
Can I just suggest for council consideration, I'm not pushing this, but if that's the pleasure of the council, I would suggest that rather than putting a number in today, which roughly equals 1%, I think it would be more effective to say that the total number of short-term rental permits combined with the existing CUPs would roughly match 1% of the residential units, because that number's going to fluctuate in different years.
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah.
That's a good idea.
I think that's a good idea.
What do you think?
Oh, I'm good with it.
Sandra? Does that sound enticing enough?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay. Shelley?
The planning commission was saying, okay, you got 17 blocks times 3, and then if you have 1 per block, which of course you wouldn't, but, I think they were trying to gauge impact on the neighborhood, so that 6 more isn't that many, but we don't know where they're going to go, so.
I mean, I think it gives us a mild consensus, and it gives us a starting point to negotiate with, if you want to, that's a bad term, to discuss with the Coastal Commission, what their pleasure is.
That works for us. I mean, that was staff's original proposal was 1%, but to incorporate the existing units works great.
And does someone want to make the motion? Craig, do you want to rephrase what we would be voting on?
Sure. In the revised version of the ordinance that's in front of you, in section 11.4.05.135, C3, I would change that sentence to say the total number of STR permits, comma, combined with existing STRs under existing conditional use permits, comma, shall not exceed 1% of the residential units in the coastal zone.
Okay. Then could I have a motion and a second?
Yeah, motion to approve?
I'll second.
And just for the record, that's a motion to introduce and waive further reading and read by title only of the ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, please vote.
Councilmember Moore, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Kalmick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Masalabit, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Sistarsik, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Verapapa, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries 5 votes yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 1701, an ordinance of the City of Seal Beach amending the Seal Beach Municipal Code, amending section 11.4.05.135, short-term rental of residentially zoned property, to permit and regulate short-term rentals in residential zones in the city.
Okay. We have no unfinished or continued business. We have no new business, so that brings us to our adjournment. And I'll now adjourn the City Council to Monday, January 23rd at 5:30 p.m. to meet in closed session if deemed necessary. So thank you all for kicking off the new year with a good meeting, and thanks for attendance. And we'll see you on the 23rd.